evening and welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 205th take live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star studio of Azle, Texas. I'm your host, Barry Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be a fantastic show. Another 2 weeks in a row, great beards on the show. This is fantastic. From one interviewer to another, a pretty exciting interview indeed. So this will be a battle of the minds, a battle of the wits. Actually, we're probably just going to learn an incredible journey that I'm really excited to learn about. But hey, before we get to great introductions, let's thank the people that make this show possible. And that, of course, is our sponsors. And tonight's show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Drew Estate has recently announced that Pappy and Company and them are teaming up once again to add the new Gordo, a 6x60 Vitola for the Pappy Van Winkle Family Reserve Barrel Fermented Premium Cigar line. I feel like their alliteration is all over the place all the time, and it really tests my pronunciation and my skill levels and my diction whenever I read these ads. Like, seriously, Pappy Van Winkle Family Reserve Barrel Fermented Premium Cigar line. That is a mouthful. You should get some. 6x60 Gordo, their latest release from this incredible series, crafted for connoisseurs who love large ring gauge cigars. The Gordo will actually launched last month and will be initially available for exclusively on Pappy and Company's website, pappyco.com, but it will then become available and accessible to Drew Diplomat retailers all over the nation next year in 2023. So check out pappyco.com for the 6x60, the latest from the Drew Estate and Pappy and Company team effort, and get yours today. So welcome everyone to our 205th take. It is my pride, my pleasure, my privilege to introduce tonight's guest, sponsored by United Cigars. Smoke one today. Start living united. Mr. Nick Libretti of JR Cigars. Nick, how are we doing tonight? That
was the most energetic intro I've ever gotten in my whole tenure. So thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure, Nick. I think I actually mentioned this last week. I've actually startled a few people. I'm pretty sure I might have frightened Charlie Minato.
He's skittish. So.
Maybe it made him almost instantly regret agreeing to be on at that time. So
I love the energy, man. I love it.
Luckily powered through. So
you just transitioned like very chill, like, hey, all right, I'm going to introduce you in 5, 4. It was awesome. I love the Showtime energy.
Yeah, gotta get it up and running, man. Especially, exactly. And a gratitude to you for joining me, and all my guests always, but gratitude to you for joining me on such a late night. And I know you're on the East Coast. Most of my guests are East Coast people, so it's like already like past people's bedtimes and stuff.
Yeah, I'm in bed a half hour ago.
Well, I appreciate it very much.
No, man, like this. Listen, your show is great. I really appreciate the invite, and everyone I've talked to in the industry who has been on your show or who knows you has nothing but respect for you. So I definitely wanted to do this.
Well, I'm glad you didn't keep asking. You might have found out the real truth, but I'm glad you asked the right people. Or at least the right people in my case. But
I asked the guys behind your head right there, the Bradley boys. So.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, no, you were mentioning, we were talking about this a little bit before the show, like your close relationship with Alec and Bradley and themselves, and I've had the privilege of getting to know them really well and becoming pretty close and stuff. So it's been really great to see not only their journey, but it was really funny because I saw Alec at the Great Smoke and he was telling me about basically the same thing. Like, he was really excited he's like, hey, you're at 200 now. And I was like, yeah, just did 200. And he's like, man, that's crazy. He's like, wasn't I like on 130 something? I was like, no, you're on 120 something. So it's originally, but yeah,
they're awesome. Their journey, like what they're doing, and those guys are like fiercely loyal, man. Like I have grown really close with both of them, and it's just it's they take such an interest in the industry at large. Mm-hmm. Sponsoring your show. They've worked with me on a lot of stuff. So yeah, they're great advocates of the whole industry.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of working with you, we're going to get more into like the whole concept later. But the latest cigar that I ordered from JR Cigars is the Alec and Bradley YU project that they did with you. So I know we'll be talking more about that here in a little bit. But speaking of, kind of speaking of cigars, I have 3 cigars in front of me here that I'm sad. It looks like you're indoors, so you probably won't be joining me tonight, but I'm going to be smoking tonight.
Not,
but I have 2 here. I think you definitely. I know one you absolutely love, and I'd like to see what the other 2 are. But what your opinions of the other 2 are. But I would like you to pick my cigar tonight.
Yes,
so here are your choices. The Muestra de Saca Exclusivo, box stamped at January 2021, so a little over a year old.
Oof.
And the Killer Bee Lancero, which came out of that Hive box special edition that they did for Blackworks Studio. Incredible job by James and Angela. And I guess you like this cigar. The Alec and Bradley Kintsugi, the Corona Gorda, which was your number 1 cigar of the year, if I'm not mistaken.
Too. It's in the size. It's in the right size.
They made my list too, but it was the Robusto that made my list.
I think you're going to be surprised by my choice. I would suggest going with the Killer Bee.
Okay.
And I'm saying that only because I haven't tried it in the Lancero. So I'm interested to see what your thoughts are. And so that might make me want to try it. Whereas I think most people are sold on the Kintsugi and the Muestra de Saca, but the Killer Bee, kind of a unique line from Black. That's from the studio, right? That's Blackworks.
Yeah, Blackworks Studio. Yeah.
Yeah. So especially in that size, kind of like a unique size. So I think that'd be a cooler one to talk about. It's like you want to talk about the cool, unique movie. We don't need to talk about, Godfather anymore.
Well, did you have a chance to try their the Intergalactic before it sold out?
I did not. No.
Oh man,
that
was pretty good.
Any type of really quick releases, these guys are just the people who buy them, they're so on top of it that by the time I remember a few days later, oh yeah, these things are going on sale. I always miss out. Any dojo release that we don't sell, sometimes we do them through JR. Any dojo release, a couple of days later, I'm like, oh yeah, they're doing that thing. Let me go try if I can get one. Nope, gone.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also tried to. Speaking of Saka, the frog juice was just like that too. At Jeff Moutette's shop in Riverside.
All the frog juice, the red meat lovers. I'm not even going to bother. By the time I even go, I even log on to this website, it's going to be gone. The computer's just going to tell me to F off at some point.
Yeah, you just log into a Facebook group and hey boys, tell me how it tasted.
Yeah. I'm going to live vicariously through the 200 people who got. Well, that's what. Listen, our 50th stuff sold. Everything sold really, really well. We sold out of a lot of stuff. Steve's we sold out of in a couple of hours, maybe it was 12 or 18 hours we sold out of. And it was, and I think, listen, the cigar was great, but I think he was testing himself because it was a very strange size. It was a big size. It was a 7.25 by, I want to say it was 7 by 54, 56. It was a big, big smoke. And I'm oh man, I don't know if people are going to be down with this. Sold out 500 boxes in 18 hours.
That's crazy, man. There's certain people in this industry. People go crazy for it. And I mean, and well deserved too. I mean, well deserved. It's not
he's not enough goodwill with I feel this industry when it comes to these special releases, if it's not good, nobody really talks about it. Not you don't really see a ton of bad people trashing especially a limited release. But when it's very good, that's all people talk about. And every one of Steve's people constantly talk about the red meat lovers, the frog juice, the one he did. What was the other one? The Daruma.
The Daruma for Ronnie's shop. Yeah, the one with the Wisconsin Comstock in it.
Yeah. I mean, look how they were so stoked for the Stillwell. Imagine anybody else coming out with a cigar with pipe tobacco. Everyone, that's a gimmick. I wouldn't buy that. Oh, that's going to be weird. Not only does he sell out of that thing constantly, it's really good. He's earned enough goodwill that we're just going to trust him with whatever he releases next.
That was one of my favorite questions I've ever asked him. I love interviewing Steve. One, he always challenges me.
He's a
And
challenge.
two,
Yeah.
and two, it's he's just a hoot to talk to. But you know, that was the first thing I said. So I sat down with him. I said, so okay, so let me get this straight. You spent the last 18 months through COVID and all screaming at the top of your lungs, how Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust doesn't make a flavored cigar, and you come out with a non-traditional cigar. What the hell, dude?
I mean, it's essentially, and I hope he doesn't hear me ever say this because it's mostly a joke, but it's essentially kind of like a Black and Mild, because that's what Black and Mild is pipe tobacco. So he made a premium Black and Mild.
He did one hell of a job with it, though. Heck
no,
yeah.
Listen, he can, when it comes to his releases, he can do no wrong. Like each time he comes out with something, I'm like, oh, this is my favorite. And then the next one, like I thought the Todos Los Dias was going to be my favorite cigar in perpetuity until the Tricky Traca came out. Now, the Tricky Traca, I still think is his best. Overall, I mean, at least personally, I think from the construction, the sizes he released it in, the overall flavor. I know a lot of people say they think it's stronger than the regular Mi Querida. It might be stronger, but I find it smoother. I find it a little bit smoother.
The original Mi Querida is just deep. Like the flavor is just deep. But the Todos Los Dias, I think has always been a sleeper for him. I loved it from the onset. I thought it was fantastic. And now I don't think he anticipated this. You know, Brulee became such a monster for him that he's pulling back Todos Los Dias a little bit. It's not discontinued.
Right.
He's just pulling back because the tobacco there's a mutually used tobacco for Brulee. And so he's not going to cannibalize his I think it's his best selling product is the Brulee. So the
story of that cigar, the story of Brulee, and then how he was able to, like with the people saying it was sweet tipped, and him transitioning that into one of the most genius, I don't want to call it, it's not a scheme, but like marketing plans. Yeah, with the ones with the codes on it. The
STFU,
yeah, the STFU was Jesus. It was so smart. It was so creative. Like I couldn't. I still say like I don't know if he sweet tipped these things on purpose to cause controversy, but if he like, it worked out well. It worked out very, very well. It does taste very sweet, though. I will say.
There's a sweetness. We did it. So Coop and I did it. We dedicated a whole show to it. So like we went through the whole sampler, you know, cleansing our palates and everything, trying to figure it out. And I got pretty close. I was one off. I got pretty close. The double sweet tipped and the regular Brulee were for me the easiest to identify.
Yeah.
So it was the single sweet where I was like, like it was really interesting. But it kind of there were some indicators that kind of went my way, and I think I got lucky, to be honest, a little bit. I do have a pretty good palate, but it was pretty lucky.
Listen, I've been good.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, yeah, I know you're not smoking tonight, but are you drinking anything other than the bottle of water? Anything special?
No. So, you picked me for a very weird time. I'm actually starting to train again tomorrow. I'm doing another half marathon in September.
Right.
I put off my start training for too many. I just moved into a new apartment, so like I was kind of just getting settled in, and I bought all new pans. So I've been cooking a bunch of different stuff, and so I put off my training for too long. So tomorrow's my start day. So I gotta be good tonight, unfortunately.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. So I mean, you said this will be your second half marathon?
Third actually, but I don't count the first one. So the first one I've done the Rocky Run in Philadelphia twice. Both times with my brother. The first one I did 2018. I had no business doing it. I had barely trained. It took me like 3.5 hours to finish, which is a long time. And I barely finished. Like I hobbled across the finish line. Then I did it again this past November. In like 2 hours and 40. So I said like 45 minutes. And it was like, I ran it. Like I ran it. I finished strong.
Yeah.
So now me and my brother are going to do one in September in it's a town called Bird in the Hand, Pennsylvania, and it's the Amish half marathon. And the medal you get at the end is a horseshoe that they made for you.
Okay.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
fantastic. I was like, the Amish half marathon. How does this work? Like,
Yeah, it's just through Amish. It's like if you just run and there's just cows and like horses and stuff. It's
okay.
going to be awesome.
That sounds cool. Yeah, that's good. That sounds like a lot of fun. That's interesting. Yeah. And then the horseshoe at the end. That's what a unique thing.
Yeah. So my brother is a runner. He's done the Marine Corps marathon. He's done half marathons where he's in the military where you got to wear like packs and stuff. And so he has like a trophy rack, or it's like a rack in his house where he has like all his medals. And I saw one. I'm like, what is this horseshoe one from? I was like, oh, it's the Amish half marathon. I'm like, I want that.
We got to do that.
I want that so bad. So we're gonna do it. We'll see how it goes.
Fantastic, man. Well, best of luck, man. I think you'll
Thank you.
You'll probably cut off another big hunk of time too. That's what I found when I gave up running just because of just time and stuff like that. But I was actually starting to run a little bit before COVID, and then all of our schedules got thrown out of whack when we started working from home and everything like that and stuff. So I'm hoping to try and pick it up again. I wouldn't be anywhere close to half marathon though. I mean, I did a 5K and that was a victory for me. But
listen,
but still,
yes.
Best start small.
Once I hit in my training, because like for the first 2 weeks, I was really having trouble getting a mile. Right. full running, not sprinting, but like actually running for a full mile was tough. And I was calling my brother. I'm like, I don't know if I could do this. And then you just keep pushing and it's hard and it sucks and your times are terrible. Then once you kind of hit 5 miles, like you can do 5 miles, even if it's tough, it all starts coming together for you. It all starts like making more sense. And it got to the point when I was towards the end of my training, I would do 2 smaller runs during the weekend. On the weekend, do a longer one. I wake up on a Thursday. I'm like, what am I doing today? I look at my phone. I'm like, oh, I got to do 6 miles. No problem. And I would go out there and I would crush 6 miles in like just over an hour, 10:50 pace for 6 miles. And I still looked like that. I was still a big guy. But that's when I knew, like, oh, once you get into the rhythm of this and you know what to expect and you know what it's going to feel like, it becomes so much easier. So the training for this is going to be way easier than the training I just did. Like, it's going to be easier by a factor of 10.
Yeah. No, the first time I hit a mile was a lifetime achievement for me. I feel that because like that was, I never thought in a million years that I could ever run a mile.
Yeah. And people who run regularly don't get that. They're like, oh, come on, it's just a mile. I'm like, dude, that's like 2,000 feet. That's a lot to run and like not stop. Like carry this. Like that's a lot. I'm like, why don't you do that in like, I'm going to give you 80 pounds of weights for you to just hold. And then you do that. And you let me know how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was really great. And that's why I want to get back into it. Cause it felt so good. It felt so good.
I work out in the gym sometimes too, but I never feel, and this is going to sound so bougie and cheesy to say, after a good run, even if I didn't do anything else that day, I've never felt better. Like my body, my anxiety was down. Like my body just felt better. I didn't get sick at all when I was training for a couple of months. I didn't get a cold or nothing. Like my body felt like in shape. I might not have looked in shape, but my body felt like it was in shape.
No, yeah, you feel like tons better. Absolutely, it's the endorphins and everything, man. That's totally. Yeah. I'm with you 1,000%. Been there, and it's fantastic. So good luck on that. That's going to be.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Excited to see. I want to see the pictures of the horseshoe.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, that will kind of lead us into tonight's major point, which is always brought to you by the people. Cigar people, the people who know everything about a lifetime of service. Protocol Cigars is more than just pool parties and good times. Well, maybe it is. But behind the fun, behind the motivation is a motivation for service and a motivation for giving back. From the original Protocol Blue to the latest release in the Lawman series, Bass Reeves, Protocol Cigars has always been about honor, passion, and yes, the people. It's what their life's work has been and always will be about. Power of the P, Protocol Cigars. Well, Nick, we've kind of took a dive, a little segue there into, running and a couple of other things and everything. So wanted to learn a little bit more about you. And so, and this kind of started, the reason I invited you on my show today was how I really, the one thing I really appreciate about you and your contribution to our industry is your interviewing style. And this is what I do. This is what I do for fun. And so I listen to a lot of different podcasts and I listen to a lot of different people interview and stuff. And I really like the way that you interview people. It reminds me a lot of mine, but our questions and our motivations seem different, which is a good thing. And I've actually learned a little bit from you that I really, kind of try to build into this craft and everything. But I just enjoy the conversations that you have. And so that's pretty much the reason I invited you on, or the main motivation and everything. But I wanted to learn a little bit about you. When was your first cigar? When did this all start for you?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the kind words, Bear. Coming from and anytime somebody that I recognize as like a player in the industry has kind words, it affects me. So I appreciate it very much.
It's well deserved.
Well, thank you. So my first legitimate cigar, I'm not going to count like a Philly's blunt that I would chomp on when I was mowing the lawn when I was younger, but I was 19, which was legal to smoke in New Jersey at the time at 19. This is many years ago. And it was my first premium cigar was a La Gloria Cubana Series R.
Oh, man.
And I think it was like the last year that Ernesto was working for General. I didn't know at the time because I had no idea what I was smoking. But looking back at it now, I think 2009 was his last year before he started EPC. So it was the last batch of La Glorias that like he was involved in. And, La Gloria is still great, but that cigar, and, listen, it's strong, especially back then, 2009, there was not a ton of very strong stuff, out there as opposed to, compared to now. So it was a strong smoke, but the flavors, the aroma, I like this. I liked how the band looked. I liked the construction was phenomenal. I remember, I didn't have to touch it up really at all. And that moment, I fell in love with. I knew this was going to be a thing. I didn't know it was going to be a career, but I knew it was going to be a thing I wanted to be a part of. Just in at least as a hobby. And I applied to JR only like 6 to 8 months later for my first job. So it was pretty quick that I started working in the industry after that.
It was a pretty quick turnaround, huh?
Yeah. They called me like the following, a few months later and brought me on for seasonal work.
Yeah, I noticed that. So you graduated from Binghamton University in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or 2010? 2012. Yeah. And I have a story about Binghamton here in just a second, but and then you started right afterwards as is their social media, I guess, director or something like that, right?
Yeah. So I was hired in the summer of 2010. Well, they had my application on for a while, and it's a quick funny story. I remember I needed a summer job. I was home from college, and I needed money for booze and food, and
the essentials.
The essentials, the college essentials. And I just had an interview that day, and I had gotten a job at a bagel deli place, like a New Jersey deli bagel, like a big bagel spot in Montville, where I was living at the time. And the guy calls me. He's like, "All right, you got the job. You start tomorrow." I'm like, "Oh, cool. What time?" He's like, "Oh, you got to be here at like 5:30 a.m. to get everything set to make the bagels." And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is gonna suck." Now these days, 5:30, I'm up at 5:30. This is part of my schedule. I run or I work out. I do all that. At 20, I was going to bed at 5:30. I was not getting up at 5:30. And I remember I got to go there tomorrow. This is going to suck. And an hour after that call from Ellie's Deli, or Eli's, I think we called it Ellie's Deli, the HR department from JR called hey, we have your application. We need somebody like a part-time associate for the store. Would you be interested in an interview tomorrow? And I'm like, yes. I'm like, what time? They're like, can you come in at 9 a.m.? And I'm like, yes. So I didn't, I just blew off the bagel place. I'm like, I'm not even going to go. I didn't call them, nothing. I just didn't show up. And I went there and they hired me part-time. So I worked, you know, helping some customers, cash registers, sweeping, cleaning the store. That entire summer I worked whenever I could. It was the first job I ever had that I liked going to work, even though it was hard. You know, it wasn't a salt mine, but it was, you know, I was emptying the carts, putting those, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen the store in Whippany, New Jersey.
People don't understand working in a cigar shop is work. Like, it's fun. It's a lot of fun, but it's work.
Yeah. And the Whippany store is huge. It's a warehouse sized store. So like just putting boxes away, you're up and down ladders, you know, you're doing all kinds of stuff, cleaning the store, dealing with customers and all that. So I did that whole summer. And then I would, you know, Binghamton was only 2 hours away. So anytime I had a long weekend, or if I had a schedule where I had my last class on Friday was like early, it ended at like 10 a.m. I would go home and I would work like the Friday night, and then I would work all day Saturday. I'd work the morning and the afternoon shift just because like I didn't care. I was smoking cigars. I was working hard. I was making, you know, probably minimum wage at that time. But I did that, and that was my pocket money. I still never thought I was going to be in the industry. I was going to school for history. I was going to be a teacher. Graduated in 2012. I'm like, well, I need a full-time job now, you know, until I figure out my next move. So they hired me full-time. And I'm like, great. So I was a full-time sales associate. Was taking some extra classes, was going to go for my master's, which was stupid. I shouldn't have done that. It's a waste of time. But then within 6 months, somebody left, and so they hired me as a key holder for the store. So basically, you know, like a closing manager. So I would run some of the night shifts, or I would open the store on certain days. You know, I had the manager's card, so I was, you know, one of like four managers. We had 3 other managers, a supervisor, and then the general manager. So did that for 6 months, and then me and my coworker Anthony, who's still in corporate with me, he was a supervisor at the time. We had gotten a new CEO, Rob Norris, who people might know as he was the CEO of Altadis afterwards. But we had talked to him a few times, and we were just, you know, we had pitched to him, like, you guys really, like, for the internet, you know, for the e-commerce site, you guys have no marketing going on. You have no social media presence. Like, you have no content. Like, this is where this is going. And after kind of badgering him, he brought us on. We had no experience. I was the social media coordinator. Anthony was our videographer. He had no camera experience. I didn't even have an Instagram page at the time, like a personal one. We had no idea what we were doing. And we just grinded. We just worked it. We Googled best practices. We took courses on our own. He figured out how to work the camera and do all the editing. Instagram, you know, what hashtags to use, you know, how to do this. For interviews, I watched a bunch of different, I never really watched any cigar related stuff. I would just watch like interview shows, listen to podcasts, like what's the best way to go about this. And if anybody watches those early videos, like we went through phases. Okay. I was wearing a lot of weird stuff. My first interview, I was wearing like a pink shirt with a pink tie and a black vest. And I was interviewing Matt Booth. That was like my first sit down interview.
Oh my gosh. Your first interview was Matt Booth?
Yeah. I was 24. I had a clean face, clean shaven, and I didn't even know what I was doing. And he was God bless cool. You. He was so cool about it. Like he didn't cut me any breaks either. He was still Matt Booth about it.
He's still Matt Booth, yeah.
He was still Matt Booth. And then I remember, so that was our first sit-down interview. And the first thing like we ever actually filmed was we didn't even have the jobs yet. We were actually still working in the store. We had to get special permission from the store to leave. We went to the first Kentucky Barn Smoker. For Drew Estate, and we filmed that, and then they had like a pipe show in Nashville the next day, and we filmed that. So really, my first interview, I guess, was Jonathan. But yeah, we just grinded it out, and it all came down to cigar knowledge. Like I just read everything I could: aficionado, coupe, Half Wheel, any review site, anything that was related to cigar news, the cigar industry. I went to all the manufacturers' homepages and read all of the bios and the About Us section. I just absorbed everything so that when we would get somebody into this, the studio, at that point, it was basically just an empty room. I was prepared, and I had a background on them, and also got a vibe. I'm like, oh, is this a family tradition, or are they more of like kind of like a marketing guy? Like what is the story here? And so, yeah, it just kind of blossomed from there. I mean, there was a period there where we couldn't pay a manufacturer to come to us to be filmed. Like, we had to beg people, please let us interview you. We're going to get 10 likes. It's going to be fine. So it was very humble beginnings, I will say.
But I think some of that absorption is actually still with you. And I know you still obviously do prep before interviews. I mean, it's very clear and evident, but like that foundational knowledge, some of the early stories and stuff, when you interview people that have had long tenure, like we were talking about your recent interviews with Sean Williams and Michael Hartglatz, like just some of the questions that you brought up were like referencing their story from early on in their days and stuff, like, Michael at the Berkeley, at Berkeley, and Sean, when he started with El Primer Mundo and things like that. So it's in his days with Plasencia and stuff like that. So it was just like, it's clear that foundational knowledge still has stayed with you and everything. So going back to Binghamton. So I can't think of Binghamton. I know it was university, but I can't think of Binghamton without thinking about the movie Rounders. Have you ever seen Rounders?
I have not. That's the card movie, like Ben.
It's the card with Matt Damon and Edward Norton. So
yeah, and Edward Norton. So
there's a huge scene in Binghamton. It's actually like the climax of the film, where they're trying to earn this money back that they owe, like the gangster, which is John Malkovich, and they're running hot. And there's a game that Edward Norton, who's just a fucking deadbeat, there's a game that he knows about from his time in prison up in Binghamton, and it's all cops and like prison guards and stuff like that. And like, he's like, we gotta play this game straight, basically. So anyway, push comes to shove. Matt Damon's cleaning house, but then Edward Norton comes in, tries to cheat. They get caught. They get the shit kicked out of them, and that's kind of like the climax of the film. But every time I think of Binghamton, I think of that, because that's where it takes place. Is in Binghamton. So
that sounds like it would happen in Binghamton. People getting the crap beat out of them at a card game is a very Binghamton story. That's water.
So how did you end up becoming a Bearcat? Like what? And why history? Because I was a double major, sports broadcasting and history. I'm obviously using one of those things now, but you were just a history major, and we're kind of doing the same thing, which is really kind of kind of cool when I heard this.
So, first, why Binghamton is because my dad is from New York originally. He's from Queens, Flushing. You could see Citi Field from where he grew up, Shea Stadium, when he was a kid. But we were at like college night in high school one night, and we see all these different booths. We're going to the booths, and my dad's like, "Oh, we got to check out Binghamton." And I'm like, "What is that?" No, I'd never heard of it before. And we talked to the lady, and apparently I was told it was a good school. I come to find out it is a very good school. And it's even a better school now than when I got into it. It is almost impossible to get into Binghamton now. It is basically for people from the city and Long Island who get into Ivy League but can't really afford it. Do they go to Binghamton? So I had roommates, and I was actually, just oddly enough, I was at a wedding 2 weeks ago for one of my old college roommates, and there was like 15 of us there. It was like a little reunion. They're all doing way better than I am. They're all engineers and project managers and working on Wall Street. And these guys were savages, when we went to college, but they were all super duper smart. I think I got in because I was out of state, and it was kind of like, get some out of state kid in here. Some Ginzo from New Jersey to kind of liven up the place. So
that's where I was going to ask. You were from New Jersey originally, right?
Yeah, I'm from born and raised North Jersey. Haven't left except for my 4 years in Binghamton. So that's why Binghamton. My dad had just knew, it's the best of the SUNY schools, the state universities of New York. So there's Albany, Buffalo. There's a bunch of them. and Binghamton is like the top tier one. Their engineering school is like bar none. It's one of the best in the country. I did not go into engineering. So I went into history because I always liked history. I remember when Titanic came out in 97, I was 7 years old. And for some reason, before that movie was even a trailer or anything, for 2 years before that, so going back to when I was like 4 and 5, I was already very much into the Titanic. I had several books. I had like this thick book with like, it was like the anatomy of the Titanic. It was all the different like blueprints and how everything built and how everything functioned. So I saw that movie in theaters 3 times when I was 7 years old because I was just into the boat. I didn't care that she was nude or there was action. I just wanted to see the boat.
That's some serious dedication from your parents, man. That's 6 hours that they sat with you in the movie theater or whatever.
My parents were very cool with me in movies. I saw Private Ryan when I was 8 in theaters. They took me to see that twice.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I come from a line of veteran. My dad didn't serve. Both my grandfathers served. My dad was in ROTC. My brother's in the Air Force. So like anything involving military, we took it not super serious, but like there was an understanding. It wasn't just about guns and blowing up. I was from a young age, I was able to understand the seriousness and like what all this stuff meant, and I was able to put it in context from a relatively early age. So I was very much into that stuff. So then I'm 17. Who knows what they want to do at 17? The people who know what they want to do at 17 in my mind are psychos. And those are all my successful friends. They all went to school for the right thing. I'm 17, and then somebody puts a piece of paper in front of me, like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. Well, what do you like doing? I like history. All right, so be a history major. Sign this paper. Now you owe us $100,000 in 5 years. And so that's what happened. A bunch of people, my parents and counselors and everything, like, what do you like to do? I'm like, I like history. Well, go do that. All right, I'm just going to go do that. So I tried to do that, and it's hard. It's hard to do. It's not a super lucrative industry. So yeah, I don't know what my plan was there. I was most likely going to try to be a teacher, but I don't think that would have worked out. I probably would have ended up working a part-time job and getting a PhD, and then maybe doing something like, writing a book.
Yeah. Teaching college, writing a book. Yeah.
Maybe teaching college.
That's what history majors do.
That's the whole point of learning history, is just to teach the next group about history. There's no, I wasn't going to be an archaeologist, but I would have made a fine professor. I would have been a cool guy, like on a history channel, the guy with like the suede jacket and a pipe, talking about Napoleon's retreat from Waterloo or from Moscow. I could have done that. But yeah, that's why history is, just because I liked it and I was 17 and I had no idea. If I had any inclination that I was good at any of this stuff, I would have gone for marketing. I would have gone for business. I would have gone for communications. Everything that I do now is just, the research and then raw. Just instinct.
It's great. It's really impressive, Nick, because like you would think that there was somewhere in your background that you were able to pick this up, and this is all self-taught. And that's where it's really impressive. I think the history thing is fun for me too, because I was that kid in high school class, history class. Every history class, there was that one idiot that was like, when are we going to use this in real life? And I just wanted to drop that kid in the next week. Like, just shut up, man. Like, history repeats itself. Like, I knew that at a young age. I enjoyed history. I loved it. I still love it. I still, I'm
it's
just
one of the only
fascinated
things that I still, it's like history, basic math, and like English are the only things I utilize now. I can tell you a single thing that I know from my chemistry class.
Right.
Not a single thing. But history, it's taught me context. It's taught me different cultures. It's taught me the importance of learning different cultures. I can see somebody now. I have a friend from work, Pavel, who works with us, who is Sikh. He's from the Kashmir area region of India, of northern India. I was able to tell that he was a Sikh because of how he dressed and what he wore. And it gave me more insight into who he is. It wasn't just like, he's generic, he's from somewhere else. I was able to understand it, and he was impressed. Like, oh, you know what a Sikh is? And I had basic knowledge of it, but that
More than most people.
Yeah, that has lent me more than anything I've learned about, chloroform.
True. Well, it's interesting you mentioned context, because I think that is that's one of the most powerful things that history gives you and me when we're talking about the profession that we have. Well, this is truly your profession. I do this part-time, but like it's
your passion though.
It's absolutely the reason that I think why we share a similar style and stuff when we're talking is, and having these conversations is context. A perfect example. It was a show that you did very recently, obviously just a couple weeks ago, that had absolutely nothing to do with cigars, and it was the aftermath of the Will Smith slap, where it was. I found that I was glued to your discussion with your partner, and I'm embarrassed to say the name's escaping me right now. I'm so sorry.
Chris.
It's Chris. Yeah. So, my apologies to him. But it was a fascinating conversation between you guys, and there was a lot of discussion of, like just relevance and context and everything. It wasn't just the actual incident in itself, and it was must listen. And I encourage anyone to go back and listen to it, because it was really good. It was probably one of the more unique, I'll use my own word, take on the whole thing. Just because.
You have to look at everything through. You can't look at anything in the world through one lens, because
Correct.
everything. If you just look at everything through your natural lens, you're only looking at it through your experiences and what you know from what you've encountered in your life. And do you know how many other people have had that experience? No one. Only you have had that single experience. So to look at anything from just your viewpoint, in my mind, has always made no sense. You've got to look at it in context from a different viewership, a different viewpoint, because that's the only way you're going to be able to maybe grasp, what was the impetus behind something, like what was the reasons for this happening. Because to somebody like me, to most people, that what he did, I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this, but like, it makes no sense. He's a crazy guy. And like, he was totally wrong in doing it. But when you look at this man, and when you look at what he has been through and what he has to deal with, not just from the media, but honestly within his own family, because I think he's got a crazy situation there. And you read some of the stories of how she's treated him and what she said on radio shows about Tupac, and she didn't want to get married and this whole thing. And you start putting the pieces together, and you see, like, all right, like, I don't think he should have done it, but like, the guy just lost it. Like, it was, and so when you look at the different avenues, it's not something I would ever do or I agree with, but it makes sense. It makes more sense now than it did the night that it happened.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it, like, it's one blip, the man's being punished, he's banned for 10 years. Yeah. He probably may never be considered for an Oscar ever again. Let's just face it.
Which is a shame. The only thing that would have been better is if after he slapped him, he was like, "Welcome to Earth." I would have liked to have seen him.
Yes.
Throw a reference in there.
And then just pulled out the cigar, would have capped it off, sit on top of him or something. Yeah. Just make it. If you're going to be over the top, just make it over the top at that point.
In reality, he had chances to like fix it that night. When he won his Oscar, he could have just done a total mea culpa and just been like, "I can't believe that. I am so sorry on this biggest stage. Chris, I can't believe that. I don't deserve what you guys are giving me. And he could have done that whole thing, and people might have felt a little sorry for him. And I'm like, oh man, it was just an instant bad decision. But no, he like went to I'm a protector of family, and I was playing the role of the guy in the movie. And it's like, all right, you've had an hour now to decompress and think about it, and you're still kind of full of shit. Excuse me for the cursing.
Oh, you're good, Ben. I know you guys bleep your stuff on mine. I'm good. Okay. Let it roll.
All right. Perfect. So yeah, I was just kind of like, you could have gained a lot back by, fixing it then, and he didn't. And then, had some BS publicist release the next day. I think now, even before the Academy punished him. I think he realizes the gravity of the situation and he really does regret it. That's why I think when he resigned the academy, I'm like, all right, he's taking this seriously now. And he's not going to hide behind the, I was protecting my wife thing. He realizes this was a big deal. And I think the biggest deal of all, like what really makes it bad, like, listen, Chris Rock is fine. It didn't really hurt him. He rebounded and he's going to make a ton of money on his comedy tour. But this is Chris Rock. He is a top 5 comedian of all time. Legendary. People will know his name for years. But now, when people think of Chris Rock forever, it will be because of the slap.
Yeah.
And so that's like, it's not that you just slapped him on, it's the reputation and the legacy that both of you have spent 30 years, which also as African-Americans couldn't have been easy either. Like they're both icons, not just like, oh, he's an icon of the African-American community. No, they broke barriers. They were huge. They're the top of the top of the top, just in general for acting and for stand-up comedy. And now, like, I'm not going to say that those reputations are totally tarnished, but there's a thing now.
Yeah.
There's a bad tag on them.
Well, Will Smith was easily transitioning into this. See, my favorite actor of all time is Denzel Washington. All time. I see everything that he's ever done. I'm a huge fan of everything he's ever done.
He was nominated this year for Macbeth.
Yeah, it was fantastic. He was unbelievable in Macbeth. And he also and this is a man that I adore, right? I adore watching his performance. I think he's an incredible actor. He made me hate him in his Oscar-winning role in Training Day. He made me hate him. That's how great of an actor he is. And Will Smith was gonna be the next Denzel. He was well-liked, affable, and very charismatic. Not in my mind, not as good of an actor, but certainly in the mentioning of it. And he was gonna, and now he's not gonna be. From one poor ass decision, and your future is ruined.
I think he had opportunity to do more Denzel stuff, but I think early, like, and he did, like, his, when he was in Ali, when he was in Pursuit of Happiness, I thought there was, even though I thought the movie was crap. I Am Legend, the one scene after what happened with the dog, I don't want to spoil it for anybody. When he's crying in the video, start talking to a mannequin, like that was heart-wrenching.
Yes.
But I think early on in his career, he had his mindset that he just wanted to be the biggest movie star ever, like the biggest box office, like all the time. And you can't really do that while doing like nuanced Macbeth. While doing Macbeth. Training Day probably did well, but I don't think Training Day made like $300 million probably even.
No.
Whereas just Independence Day, I think, did $500 million.
Yeah.
Men in Black, like all the Men in Blacks, I think there's like over $1 billion for the 3 Men in Blacks, for the original 3. So I think that was like more like he just wanted to be, and also the movie industry has changed, which me and Chris have talked about, because obviously besides cigars, we're also both really into movies. The industry has changed where these kind of big budget, star-studded, but nuanced movies like a Private Ryan, like a Schindler's List, like a Ben-Hur, or like movies with a big cast, star-making potential that also do a ton at the box office. They don't really make those anymore. It's right. Now. I guess Dune was like as close, like it was like is in the realm. But now it's like either like Marvel, DC, big budget, but more for everybody, little kids, adolescents, or the movies that are made for adults are like Power of the Dog and Coda, which, like, listen, nothing against
are going to be streaming. Yeah, they're on Netflix, and absolutely.
And no offense against Coda, I plan on watching it. I've heard it was a fantastic movie. I did not hear about that movie until the Oscars.
Very good.
I had no idea that movie existed. Power of the Dog, I only heard about because Sam Elliott said some pretty rough stuff about it. And I'm a big Sam Elliott fan, but
I'm a big Sam Elliott fan too. I didn't hear those comments, but I thought Cumberbatch was really good in it, but overall I didn't like the film, which was disappointing because I'm a big Western fan too. I grew up watching John Wayne movies with my father, so I'm a sucker for a Western every time. That's why I thought I loved Denzel's Magnificent Seven. I thought that was incredible.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
Yeah, I like a traditional like Western. Nowadays they're always trying to make it more nuanced and like, what is the character really feeling? And like, oh, what if this happened to them? And it's like, can we just how about like Open Range? Like I feel like Open Range was like the last great Western.
Yeah.
It was drama, it was heavy, but then it had like a 15-minute fight at the end. It had Robert Duvall in it, which is, he's the champion. Kevin Costner, who's now like Yellowstone. My dad really likes Yellowstone. I have to get into that show, but like I heard Yellowstone is like a Western. It's basically like a Western.
Absolutely. No, 100%. The other one, if you haven't watched it yet, that I really love is 3:10 to Yuma. The remake.
With Christian Bale and Russell Crowe.
And Russell Crowe, yeah. Incredible.
Two guys that if they slap somebody at the Oscars, I would not be surprised at all.
Right.
If Russell Crowe slapped somebody at the, I would be more like, oh really? Oh okay. I'd be like, oh wow, yeah. I mean, makes sense.
Yeah, he was probably drunk.
I'm surprised he hasn't hit somebody yet.
He's probably thinking to himself that he probably dodged a bullet for not being the first person to slug somebody at the Oscars.
I don't know if you saw it, but like Fox News was interviewing Mel Gibson, and they were like, so the Oscar slap, blah, blah, blah. So there's been talk that if you were the guy to hit somebody at the Oscars, that there would have been much more trouble. And the entire time Mel Gibson's like, don't ask me. And then they asked it. And then you just hear Mel Gibson's like publicist, like in the background. All right, that's enough for today. Thank you. And they just cut the interview off. He's like, I just got back into Hollywood's good graces. I'm not getting in the middle of this.
No, absolutely not.
I want to talk about this.
Absolutely not. So funny segue there, but I think that going back to context and everything, it's really shaping your interview style and everything. So you said you like absorbed a lot. Was there an interviewer or a person that like you like? Again, this is all self-taught. So like, was there someone that you like really liked their style, or that you were like, yeah, this is what I want to go for when I'm having conversations and interviews with people?
So I hate to kind of say it now, because it didn't influence me early on, but recently, especially with the new studio setup, and now that I've gotten more comfortable, podcast interviews, the Joe Rogan style conversational interview has definitely influenced me. But before that, it was still a conversational style, but it was more because I didn't know how to interview. So I'm like, if I can just, I knew how to get something out of somebody in a conversation, like me and you just talking, having a cigar at a table, talking. If I want to know something about you, I know how to get it out that way. I know how to make segues to get to a point or to get to a question. But in terms of like filling out like 10 questions, I didn't know how to do that effectively. So I just didn't. I'm just like, I'm just going to talk to these people. I'm going to have ideas in my head of what I want to talk about. And I got to make sure I want to mention these 10 cigars or there was this big thing that they released last month. And I want to make sure I get to that, but I'm not going to be here like, so you're releasing something new next week. Tell us about it. I didn't want to do it that way.
Right.
So I would start off with a question and then lead into a conversation and then, play off of their answer and then figure out, on the spot, all right, how do I segue that into talking about this? And then I would talk about that and BS about this topic for a while. Like, all right, now I want to ask them about this. So how do I bring it back around to here? And it was tough, but it eventually, listen, I'm still not great at it. There's still much better people in the industry than me when it comes to interviewing. But I want to know about you. And the best way to know about somebody is just to talk to them. It's not to, if you go on a date and you're like, tell me 10 points about you, it's going to be a short date. You know what I mean? But you engage somebody in conversation, you learn about them through a more natural way. It just makes it much more interesting. One thing I will say that I try to do, that's always been important to me, and this also is evident in how we handle our social media too. the manufacturers, in my mind, are the stars of everything. They are the cigar celebrities. Them and their product are what's important. I am not important. And I kind of tell myself that going into an interview. I want to give them the space. I want to talk as little as possible, like you're doing right now. Just let me blabber on. I want to talk as little as possible and give them the floor so they can talk right to the customer, because the customer doesn't want to hear from me. They want to hear from them. So the focus at all times is on them, not me being like a late night host and trying to get a quip in and trying to do a thing. At all times, the focus is on them. Let them tell their story. Let them tell their process, because that is going to translate better for the customer, for the viewer, than me. No one wants to hear from me. You know, I'm just a middleman between who they really want to hear from. So that's how I've kind of always treated it.
Yeah, I've often said this about my own show. Is like the questions that I ask are about like the story behind the story. Behind the story. Like there are things that I'm genuinely interested in hearing about, which sometimes makes for, I'm sure, a less interesting interview for some people. But at other times it leads to fantastic interviews. Yeah. My favorite, one of my two favorite interviews of all time, was very similar to tonight, was Miguel Chodell, who my first interview with him, did not know him at all. We met that night, similar to tonight. You know, Nick and I knew of each other, everybody, but we've never actually met formally or anything. And so this is our first conversation, really. And that was, you know, Miguel and I found out that we had like these strange, you know, things in common. Like we have this love of presidents and baseball, and we're both like kind of obsessed with them. And it's really, you know, it made for a really great conversation. So it is similar in the way that you do it. But speaking of like the style of interview, you mentioned the new studio that you guys set up. I love the new setup because it is very relaxed. You guys have the nice easy chairs. The mics are set up for you in front. I've got a headset, but it has that very conversational cigar lounge feel to it, which is perfect, I think, for the way that you like to kind of, like you said, spotlight them. So did you have a hand in designing the new studio, or is this part of your vision, you and Chris, or were you kind of saddled with this? How did the new studio come about?
So I don't want to take full credit, but yeah, I had a pretty significant hand in design. So the original basic idea for that style came from actually Anthony, who I used to do videos with. He's, like I said, he still works with us. Any of our fans know who Anthony is. He's been around a while. But Anthony had the idea years ago. He's like, oh, what if we got the different logos from cigar companies and we like got stencils made and we like spray painted it on the back wall? I think that'd be so cool. Anthony always has the best idea, but he always has it like 5 years too early. He's thinking so far ahead, but it's always too. So at the time, I'm like, that's stupid. We're never going to be able to do that. It's a whole thing. And then, we have new bosses, not new, past couple of years. And then once COVID kind of subsided, we were back in, they're like, listen, we will give you guys, whatever you need. We want to get you out there in the field. We want to get you out there interviewing people. We want more content. It's really growing. It's becoming a big thing. What do you guys need? And I'm like, we need a new studio. I don't want to bring people up there, with a painted white wall and a fake backdrop. So I was working with Chris, who's our lead videographer, and I'm like, dude, we should get cigar logos for the back wall. And at first we were going to do the stencil thing, but then one of our creative designers like, hey, there's a company that makes like the
tins.
They're vinyl decals.
Oh, they look like tins. They're vinyl. Okay.
They're vinyl decals that stick to the wall.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But you can pull them off and then you can put them back on and they stay stuck. It's like this weird adhesive that they have that it'll go on. And those have been up that we had one fall down once, and it was because it was shipped like rolled up. And so there was like wrinkles and stuff in it. And so it was like in it and it fell. But otherwise those things have stuck up there. And yeah, we've got the carpet. Carpet also works for a little sound dampening because it's a big room. But yeah, we want to create a very relaxed, and I tell everyone when I sit down with them, especially if it's the first time, I'm like, hey, we're just having a conversation. Sometimes they're like, oh, if you can, if I'm interviewing somebody like really big, like a Nestor Plasencia or like Jonathan Drew, maybe somebody will, like, one of his people, like, look, if you can send us like a list of questions, and I'm like, I can send you a list of ideas of what I might talk about, but like, this is not hard hitting. This isn't 60 minutes. Like, it's just going to be a conversation.
I'm not Charlie Rose. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if they say something in the midst of having a conversation and they decide that they don't like it, we can cut it out. We can edit around it. Like there's no pressure here. Like we're not doing gotcha journalism. And one of the ways, and we mentioned it in that Will Smith episode, that we even handle the podcast is, listen, we're a cigar company. We advocate, that's what we sell. That's our business. But when we're doing the podcast, just me and Chris, one of the things we really wanted to emphasize is that, when you're hanging out with somebody, and most people that I smoke cigars with are not big cigar smokers. They smoke on occasion. Mm-hmm. So when I'm hanging out with them, very little of the conversation has anything to do with cigars. I'll explain to them what I gave them, because I'm always giving it to them. They're not bringing their own stuff. I'll explain to them like what I gave them, kind of what it's made out of. Here's what to expect. And then that's it. You don't sit there and every little puff, I'm going to tell you about this. And, this guy was, it was usually when you're smoking a cigar, very little conversations about, unless you're like at a herf, unless you're at like a cigar thing. Otherwise, if you're just hanging with your friends, you're talking about, the Yankees, who are 2-1 right now.
You had to rub that in, right?
Yeah. Well, are you a Red Sox fan?
I'm a Red Sox fan, man.
Well, you're from Texas, though.
Yes.
All
My
right,
father's side of the family's from New England, though. So
I'll take you as a Red Sox fan any day over being an Astros fan. They have superseded the Red Sox in terms of villainy for the New York Yankees.
Fair enough. Oh, good. Oh, that's nice.
And I'm actually going to Houston in a few weeks for the Texas Cigar Festival, and like I'm gonna give that city a piece of my mind. I'm gonna just find random people and be like, "You guys cheated." Start
going up to people with like a trash can, and
banging around the city. Probably end up getting shot. Houston's a tough town. But yeah, I like to make it this is what you do when you smoke a cigar. It's conversational. The top topics range. And sometimes when I talk to some of the manufacturers, the topics may even range, because I want to espouse the essence of a cigar, not just because listen, man, and this because you've interviewed, 200 people and you've watched other interviews. There's only so many times that Alec and Bradley can talk about the inspiration behind Kintsugi. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's only so many times Pete Johnson can talk about the Monster Series. There's only so many times you can ask Carlito about Opus X. People know this already. It's one thing if we were all doing this, 10 years ago, but it's people talk about it. Like all this stuff is out there. There's articles and there's Coop, there's a half wheel thing. There's an interview over here. They're on their own social media talking about it. So I try to bring something else, or we do, because Chris as well. We try to bring something else to the table as well. What can make this more unique? What can still give the viewer insight into what the manufacturer is thinking without being like, so what are you thinking about when you're making this blend? How else can we get there? And sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes the things that they kind of, talk about or come upon in a conversation, is like a subconscious inspiration for some of their projects that people didn't even know about. That's happened, a few times where somebody, you kind of like, oh, that's why they're really into that. Or that's how that came about. And it's interesting, but we wanted to just have that very relaxed cigar smoking vibe, that we don't think of ourselves as like media. We don't think of ourselves as, we do to an extent, when we can get media access to places, but we don't think of ourselves as like journalists, or we're going to get the news, or like a Joe Rogan where we got to get to the bottom. We're just talking to interesting people.
Absolutely.
So,
no.
and the studio is resemblant of that, just a relaxed place to talk about fun things.
Well, you mentioned this uniqueness too, and that was a word that you were. I remember your top 20, your most recent top 25 episode, where you kept using that word, and you almost cursed yourself because you're like, I keep saying this, but I shouldn't. But you talked about, but when we talk about cigars, they're especially nowadays, the ones that kind of stand out, they do have something unique, as he said, and something that is interesting about this industry. As an industry, we love good anniversaries, right? We love celebrating tradition and milestones and things like that. Even myself, like for my 200th take, I had Carlito Fuente on. So I mean, it was a big deal to have
give him
him
my
on.
number. I've been trying to get a Fuente on for years.
It was no small feat for sure,
Yeah.
and it was such a great conversation, and it's something that I find that very rare do companies do consistently well. You know, Davidoff is a great example. Their 50th anniversary a few years back was incredible. Altadis did a great thing with the Monte Cristo 1935. The Nicaraguan was, I mean, a stellar cigar to celebrate, that iconic moment, and something completely different. Like that was the best part about it, was like, we're going to honor Monte Cristo in the story, and we're going to come out with something completely different in the Monte Cristo. We're going to create a new story for Monte Cristo, which was really cool. And then, but there are some companies that just suck at it. Like they're just not very good. And I mean, how do you let huge anniversaries for like Macanudo go by and not do something just incredible? You know, as an example, and not to pick on them or anything, but like that's just one in a handful of stories that
General as a company, and I even talked about this with Sean, mostly off camera, but like they're at a bit of a crossroads now. So I feel like for my entire time in the industry, General and Altadis were basically neck and neck. They were doing a lot of the very similar stuff. They had similar brands. It's just like,
carrying on the Cuban story,
General probably had at the time, probably some of the cooler brands. They bought La Gloria, they bought CAO, they bought Tarano.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably had like a little bit of an edge. But then recently, I love the Inspirato line. I love a lot of what Ricky has been doing or did. And then obviously Cohiba has just been, a huge turnaround with Cohiba. But there's not a lot of consistency across all of their brands like you're seeing now with Altadis. And I'm not just saying that because they're our sister company, but what Rafael Nadal has brought to Altadis is just, you did not have a bigger Altadis naysayer than me. When I was working in the store and I was a fiery 25-year-old, oh my God, like, bro, these things stink and it's the same things. It's always the same crap. I would get it in set. And listen, and they'll be the first ones to admit they had some pretty big stinkers. I don't know if you remember the Trinidad Paradox or the H. They had some pretty big stinkers. And then right when Rafael came, I want to say the first thing that he released was the Trinidad Santiago, which was good. It wasn't amazing, but it was good. I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. And then ever since then, it has been off to the races.
Yeah,
with just about everything they've released.
What they've done with Henry Clay, H. Upman,
that's the most impressive. Is Monte Cristo. They took Monte Cristo from being good to where it should be, which is it should be this kind of legendary. Every release from Monte Cristo should be a big deal. It should be an awesome thing. It should be celebrated and everything. But Monte Cristo already had a pretty good reputation. They were already huge sellers, like the Monte Cristo White and the Platinum and the Classic. What was more impressive is what they did, again, consistently with like their sub brands. Yeah. What they did with Henry Clay, what they did with Trinidad, both the two Trinidads they've released. What they did with, I considered H. Upman a sub brand at the time, like a couple years ago, just because it wasn't. Except for the vintage Cameroon, I can't tell you another H. Upman. Maybe the 1844.
The Banker series.
I couldn't stay. And they came like, oh, the box looks like a gold bar. And I'm like, get out of here with that, that nonsense. I want to say H. Upmann now might be my favorite brand from Altus, because the 175th is probably one of the greatest cigars I've ever had. The Hispaniola is amazing. The 1845 Añejo, I didn't really like the branding of it because it was kind of regular H. Upmann branding. Like, they didn't really do anything with the branding, but the cigar was great. And then this year with the Heritage, I have never seen a bigger turnaround. Romeo, really bringing Romeo back to, and finding its footing with the Reserva Real Nicaragua, the 50th that they did for us. There was a time where like Romeo had some elegance to it. There was elegant Romeos, and then they kind of lost that, and now they're finding that again. So overall, just I want to say for the past couple of years, the most impressive work has been done by Altus.
No, General, I agree.
Yeah, General has had like big spikes in some of their line. So I think the Inspirado was a big.
It was a big turnaround.
The Amazon Basin series from Ricky was a big spike. And listen, one of the La Glorias made our top 25. The Medio Tiempo La Gloria made our top 25, but La Gloria is not really what it used to be. Hoyo, don't know what's really going on there.
Yeah. Don't
get me started on Punch and what they're doing with that brand. And this is not even saying that they're making bad cigars. It's just they're spotty in terms, like there's no consistency across what they're doing. And the Punch one, and it's a shame because those are actually really good cigars, but the entire Chinese food lineup really.
How do you get from Punch to Chinese food? I've always wondered that. I wanted to ask that.
Yeah, and like you own Diesel, and they're doing like the Sunday gravy thing with Diesel. Like, do that with Diesel. You don't do that with Punch. Like, that would be like making an H. Upmann, burger and fries. Like, you don't do that with these heritage brands. You could come out with, and people would buy it, a $15, high-end Punch, either made by yourself or like, have AJ make it for you, But like, and if you marketed it correctly and gave it that kind of, market it like the H. Upmann Heritage that came out this year, like, classy, but still updated.
Market it like AJ did with the Ramoneones, what he did when he got
the Ramoneone. Yeah, exactly.
That was a top 25 cigar for you too. Yeah.
Yeah, the Ramoneones. I think that's probably AJ's best work that's like under his flag, like under his personal flag. I know there's some kind of deal that he has with General, but that's like considered one of AJ. Like, you buy that.
Yeah, it's an AJ brand. Yeah, it's an AJ brand for sure.
And I think it's the best AJ brand by a decent margin too.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think he usually does his best work elsewhere. I mean, listen, the New World is great, and the Last Call, and San Latano, won a lot of awards when it came out. But I really feel like it's Ramoneones and then kind of everything else in terms of his stuff. But yeah, go back to your point. I know I'm rambling here. I don't know. I guess they're the big Macanudo was like the vintage 2010 was like their anniversary-esque thing, I guess. But I don't know. I don't know what's going on over there. And now with Ricky leaving, and I don't know, is he just, I don't even know the story. Like, is he just retiring? Is he going somewhere else? Is he, what, I don't know, even know what the deal
is. There's rumors abound in this industry, right? But nothing concrete as of yet. But
what's the best rumor you've heard?
The best rumor that I've heard, like best as in like funniest, or best as in
like that would be wild if he did that. Don't put yourself out there. I don't want to get you in trouble if it's something crazy, but I'm just curious because I
haven't heard anything like too off the kilter, like it's stuff. Like I have a feel like I have a very healthy understanding that he's probably not done. Like there's like, we haven't seen the last of him. Like they're calling it a retirement, but I don't think he's done. I just don't. Yeah. It'd be really strange to me. But I like Justin Andrews. I think he's going to do. I think what he did with Diesel.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he made Diesel General's best brand.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
like mover and shaker and stuff like. I mean, Cohiba has its own little, Sean and Cohiba have their own little world and stuff. And the Series M was really fantastic last year. I heard this one's even better and stuff like that. But I was a big fan of the Royale. And I think Laurel does a great job with Macanudo, but it's not on her shoulders too. It's not on Justin's. It's not on Sean's.
And see, that's also the thing is like, they have these brand managers. Some are more involved in the cigar making process than others. Like Sean is pretty heavily involved. Ricky was the guy. He was making those blends. I don't know how involved. I'm sure Laurel is involved somewhat. I don't know to what extent. Justin, I think, is probably pretty heavily involved, but
very much so.
100%. But at Altadis, it's Rafael. I mean, Javier, obviously, is the boss. When it comes to like blend, where we're making, what we're making, what it's going to be called, the buck stops at one guy.
Mm.
Now, the danger in that, and, just in general, not at general, in general, is that if that one guy sucks, you got a problem.
Yeah.
But whatever that one guy is doing, it's going to be consistent. And so, Altadis has brand managers for Upman and Romeo and Monte Cristo. But in terms of like what those brands are doing, it's one guy calling the shots. I'm sure there is one person kind of calling the shots overall at general, but you also have these like little fiefdoms going on. And like I said, some of them are really moving ahead, like what Sean is doing or what Ricky did / was doing. And then like, like I said, what's going on with La Gloria? What's going on with Hoyo? When I was younger, these were as big as anything else in their portfolio. Like Hoya, what's going on with Partagas? Like the Cortado this year was good. The Cortado was good. I'll give him that. But like the focus is off. Like Altadis has just been able to keep it clean across the board, whereas General just seems like they're juggling a little bit with some of their stuff. And I think they just need to find a direction to go. And a clear pathway for each brand and give each brand like an actual solid identity. Because you can't have the Punch Crew Royale and then the freaking
next to the chop suey. Yeah.
Like what is this? If Rafael came and said, Nick, smoke the cigar, it's the best cigar ever, and I smoked it, I'm like, that's amazing. What is it? He said, oh, it's the Monte Cristo root beer. I'd be like, I'm quitting. Somewhere else, because this is nonsense.
Oh, I agree, but I think, like I said, I have a lot of faith in Justin. I think he's brilliant. I think he's hardworking. I think he did an incredible job with Diesel, and then with the split, because there is a split now. It's
the forged,
General and forged and stuff like that. I think that's going to help some of those brands that you mentioned, like Bolivar was another one that didn't get mentioned, but like Hoya and stuff like that, and there in La Gloria, I think we'll have a bounce back too under the split. So it'll be interesting. But to the original question about like anniversaries and stuff, I mean, this was a big year for you guys, and this was a big project that you guys undertook, the 50th anniversary. Now, obviously, you didn't come up with the idea of the 50th anniversary because it happened. JR's been making cigars longer than we've been alive combined, and they've been in the business for a half century. But this was a momentous occasion, and you played a really big part in making this a celebratory year. And I mean, what was it? It ended up being 12 releases.
Oh God, yeah. I think it ended up being 12 was the total. Yeah.
12. I mean, and some of the most renowned, from the boutique, from the foundation, the Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, all the way to, you guys had, Alec and Bradley, but also, there were some really, you guys spaced the gamut with these 12 projects. It was really, Davidoff made a 50th anniversary celebration.
So we called in a lot of favors on this one. But it was a big anniversary. I was actually, I had the idea to do it. I'm going to be honest. It wasn't even it's technically my idea, but I was talking to a buddy of mine, Dane Devereaux, who I don't know if you've ever heard of Dane, but Dane worked with us for a while at JR. Then he worked for Altadis. He was like their private label manager. Then he moved to Colorado and did some weird Colorado thing for a bit. And now he's working at Davidoff, I think also doing their private label stuff. But Dave's a good friend of mine. And we were talking that summer. So summer of 2020. And he was like, and he used to be a product merchant for us a couple of years before that. So he had worked on, I think we had 1 or 2 releases for our 45th year anniversary. And it was a Davidoff, but it was one of those Davidoffs that they just kind of hand out where it's like the same blend and they're just putting a different label on it. And then Altadis did some weird thing for us where it was called like the JR 45 anniversary. And it was in like disco letters. This is like I said, this is pre Rafael Nadal. So this was right at the cusp of Altadis being weird. Yeah, because that must have been so like 2016.
16, yeah, 16. Mm-hmm.
Which means that it got made in 2015. So yeah, this is way before. This is a couple years before Raphael started. And he had mentioned to me on a phone call. I was like, "Hey, I think it's." I was talking to him and Ernesto Kranwinkel, who was at the time working for Altadis, and they mentioned like, "Oh, it's JR's 50th anniversary this year, or coming up in 2021." I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're right, it is." And he's like, "Yeah, you guys gonna do anything?" And I'm like, "I mean, they haven't told me anything, but I'm like." And then we were kind of BSing back and forth. And, they were talking to the Altadis guys. I'm like, oh, what if we got some the 50 had just come out and the 175th had come out. So like, those are the ones we started talking about. And it was like, oh, what if we took like the 175th, but then we got a special size of it for this 50th. Oh, that'd be great. Tell Raphael. And then it kind of just snowballed, and I came up with, and there was a lot of people who had a lot of hands in making this happen. But we kind of pitched it, to the bosses, like we should do like a crazy big thing this year. Now, 5 years ago at JR, they would have been like, no. Our new team of bosses, our CEO, my 2 bosses, they all have like actual marketing backgrounds. Our CEO, Davide Moro, was the VP of marketing for Nespresso. So he, like the whole George Clooney campaign for Nespresso was his baby. Like that was his thing.
Oh, wow.
One of my bosses, Sasha, used to work for Victoria's Secret and like iHeartRadio and like these kind of companies. So when I said 50th anniversary, they were like, oh, this is gold. Like this is a prime time for us to like push out we could do a lot of crazy stuff. It's great for branding. So the first thing we did is our department worked up the logo, 50th anniversary logo, and they were like, put that everywhere, all over social, change the logo on the website, for the catalogs for the next year. This is going to be the logo on the catalogs. And then we compiled a list of manufacturers. Our product merchants were like, we should include these kind of like JR favorites, which is, Oliva, Drew Estate. Who else did they have? Davidoff was one. I definitely wanted Altadis, and I'm like, we should really plug into the boutique market because we do okay with them, but not that these are going to, not that one limited edition is going to make a ton of money, but it can bring eyes that maybe didn't know.
Here it is right here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was a beautiful logo. I have a nice quarter zip too that has that on it. It's one of my favorite things. But using some of these boutique manufacturers, it can bring some of their customers to our site. And also maybe some of our customers who have never heard of these other brands before, it can give them a little bit of an insight. So my boss is like, what's your wish list? And I'm like, well, if you want to have a guaranteed success, you need to have Steve Saka. I'm like, and he was actually, I used the analytics from his previous releases in the pitch to them because we have never done anything like this before. And any of this kind of like limited edition, like a dojo release or anything like this, we have never done anything like it. We did 12. So I had to pitch it to him, and I basically pulled up, because it's not totally out there, but I pulled up all the dates of his releases that he had done with other stores. And then I would go on that store social media and be like, all right, when did they post that this was sold out? And every time it was the next day. I think only one of them, it was like 2 days. And then I went to Cigar Dojo and I did the same thing. I'm like, all right, when is the article or the social media post saying the Dogma is for sale? And then when is the post saying that it's sold out? A couple days. And so I use these as the pitch to the company to be like, these are viable. Like we can utilize these brands. And what the 50th celebration was about, it wasn't really about us. It wasn't about me or the product merchants or the CEO. What we wanted to celebrate was three things. We wanted to celebrate our manufacturing partners who have been there with us for years and years. Everyone that we utilize, these manufacturers, Oliva, Davidoff, Altadis, Drew Estate, all these guys. We wanted to thank them and show them appreciation because they are the heart and blood of the industry. Our company, so all the hardworking people behind the scenes, the creative team, the accountants. We're actually, our 50th anniversary party is in a few weeks. We're doing a boat tour of the Hudson for our team.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was about them. And then most of all, it was for all of our customers. And so how do you celebrate with all of our customers when they all have different tastes? Well, you get one of everything. You kind of run the gambit on releases. And so we just went, full bore with it. We just tried to get everybody. And there was not one person that said no. There was nobody that we contacted that wasn't involved in it. Like everybody was like, absolutely, let us know what you need. And they all did amazing. I'm going to use your platform as kind of an announcement. We're actually bringing back Mother Church from Crown Heads.
Yes.
So, that'll be coming. I got to text John, hopefully end of May, early June. We're going to try to do something in the Nashville CD store. So yeah, we're going to bring back Mother Church.
Oh, it's perfect. That's actually my one question was about this. Was you answered it for me. I was like, you've got to figure out how to bring Mother Church. And I've told John this, I've told Miguel this. Mother Church was probably the best cigar that I smoked all last year. And it was absolutely sensational. Unbelievable.
So it was I couldn't put it higher in the rankings because nobody would believe that I wasn't just doing it because it was our 50th. Like I knew that I was going to get pushback, that if I put this any higher in our top 25, people are just going to be like, you're just shilling because it's your own brand. It's the whole thing. So I think we put it at number 10.
12. Yeah. Okay.
But in terms of what I smoked the most of last year,
you said that repeatedly. Yeah.
It was Mother Church by a mile. Like nothing was even remotely close. Kintsugi was a distant second. I smoked a lot of Kintsugi, but it was Mother Church. That blend, it's perfectly tuned to, at least to my palate. Medium body, a lot of flavor, but nothing crazy. I can smoke that cigar any time of day, eating or drinking anything, and it's going to just hit every single time. The marketing was great, and that's another, not to go off on another tangent, another reason I think that the whole celebration was a success is we didn't have any ideas. We didn't tell anybody, oh, do a thing like this. They were like, oh, what do you want this thing to look like? And because we wanted, again, part of the celebration was putting the focus on, I swear to God, Bear, I am all about putting the focus on the manufacturers and the brand and the cigars. That's what's important. So when these guys agreed to do this for us, and you can even ask John this, he's like, oh, like, well, so like, what do you want? What do you want it to be? And I'm like, I want you to make the most Crown Heads thing you could possibly make. I'm like, I want you to make a brand that is all about you and just screams Crown Heads. And boy, did he.
Yeah.
Like, it's the most Nashville Americana, and it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. And that's the same thing I told, Nick and Alec and Bradley. Is I'm like, just make the most you thing. And then they love, for these kind of releases, it's not a lot of money for these manufacturers, but it's a lot of fun. And so when you let them do something like no constraints, it's one thing if you go to them like, oh no, I want you to do a cigar, but I want it to be, whatever, Italian themed, or I want it to be about, the history of JR. But when you just give them like, hey, listen, just do something awesome, they're going to give you like their best, because now they get to really have fun with it. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we got from everyone, from the Wagyu, the Aganorsa we did. We took the Lunatic, we put it in the side, the thinner ring gauge. I think it was a 6x48 that sold out. That got a top 25 from somebody. Who gave that one a top 25?
I think it was Blind Man's Puff. They gave
Blind
both Mother Church and
4, and then Aganorsa. The Oliva one, I think that one was a game changer, because I actually think that Melanio smoked way better. And the same thing goes for the aging room. I think the Parejo rounded versions of both of those cigars smoke better than the originals. And it's been pretty well verified outside of just me. Like, most people I've talked to that have no reason to give me a compliment are like, no, the 50th anniversary versions of those cigars are better than the standard versions. Even Raphael for the aging room. And he swore me to secrecy when he called me when he was working on the blend. He's like, don't tell anyone. This is way better than the Box Press. Yeah, he was. But I've been telling everyone that for the past year, though. So like, the secret's out. But even those versions, the Davidoff was great. I mean, all of our JR Ultimate. I swear to God, I got a phone call 2 days ago from Raphael saying, hey, I'm sitting here with Javier, who's the big, head of all Tabacalera. And he's like, and we're smoking the JR Ultimate. This is amazing. Can you tell us who made this? Because they weren't involved in that one, because it's not an Altadis brand. And I'm like, AJ makes it. And he's like, I thought it was AJ. But that cigar was like $8, So everybody just like really brought their A game, and it became such an awesome thing. And I'm so proud and happy, and yeah, it was just a really, really cool experience.
What an achievement, Nick. Seriously. Yeah. I mean, sincerely, what an achievement. Bringing all these people together, getting them to buy in and deliver something really unique on every single release. It's just unbelievable. And they
delivered quickly, and they delivered quickly during a pandemic. They had back orders on their own stuff. And these guys, we started having this conversation in August. We released the Romeo in February. Mother Church was the next one. That was like early March. And like, we didn't even send a PO order in until like October. Like, they got this stuff done quickly during the worst logistical time, and cigar back orders coming out of the wazoo. And all these guys crushed it. I'm indebted to, I will work with these companies forever. I will do anything that they want as a thank you for this, because they really put on a show.
Really did. And I'm so personally excited. Everyone should be excited about the Mother Church coming back. That cigar is dynamite for John. It's going to be dynamite for you guys for hopefully years to come, if you guys can keep it rolling out. It's an incredible blend.
I'll send you some. We should be getting them in a few weeks. Some of the bulk. I'll send you some as a thank you for having me on the show.
I won't stop you. Fantastic. Well, it kind of leads us into what I call our fun segments for the night. And but hats off to you, Nick. What a great story. And just
thank you
all around it. Just an incredible job. All your years at JR's. Just you're crushing it. You're killing it. And I know it's continuing to evolve. So I'm really excited to see where, I saw where you guys started, and, I'm really excited to see where this goes in 5 years or so. So this is going to be really exciting. So, so our fun segments start with our one must go segment, Nick. So again, as a first time visitor here on the show, it's a pretty simple concept. I'm going to give you 3 things, and you got to kick one of them to the curb. So it's pretty simple concept. And as always, our one must go is always brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey and Byron line. So smoke ones a day and start living united. So Nick, again, with this being our first conversation ever, there wasn't really a lot for me to go on. I know you like wrestling. I know you've gotten back into shoes. So I know you're a big Jordan guy and everything. So, but I thought, what better thing to kind of discuss or kick to the curb than when that can be often argued about over and over again than food, and specifically toppings of food. So it's not just just these iconic foods. So we're going to do a triple header of the one must go. We're going to start with burgers. We're going to go to pizza, and we're going to do hot dogs to wrap it up. So
I'm an expert in all of these things.
Fantastic. So these are the 3 toppings that you have to choose from. One's got to go, and you tell me why. So let's start with the burger. Okay. So I could have gone cheese. I think cheese is a standout. So we're going to leave cheese off. So we're going to go with the vegetables here. What's the veggies that you like on your burger? Which one's got to go? So we're going to start with pickle, tomato, or onion.
Onion
on your burger. Onion's got to go. So all types of onion, not caramelized. You're done with the onion.
Well, listen, a specialty onion, sure, but I gotta have pickle. And if we're talking just a standard like red onion or just like a circle onion as opposed to a tomato, I want the tomato. Now, if you're going to start throwing out caramelized onion, well, all right. Well, now that's a whole different thing. But like if I'm going to McDonald's, I want, or a burger joint, pickles and tomatoes are a must.
It's got to be a good tomato. So where I grew up,
it's got to be a Jersey tomato. That's what.
Yeah, I grew up. We grew tomatoes in our backyard. So I had fresh garden tomatoes all the time, pretty much year round, and that was, for a long time, I actually wouldn't put ketchup or any condiment on my burger because our tomatoes were so good. I would just put a huge thick tomato slice with cheese, and that was my burger growing up, and it was just delicious. And pickles, of course, too. But when I got to college, I found out good tomatoes are really hard to come by because I ordered a burger at the I guess the school cafeteria, or whatever you want to call it, and I was like, yeah, throw 3 tomatoes on there, and they were like white and gross, and it was just like, I was like, what the fuck is this? It was just bad.
People don't realize that like a good tomato actually has flavor. Like it shouldn't just be like this watery. Like a good tomato will have like actual great flavor to it. And those, I like I said, I got nothing against onions overall. I'm Italian. Peppers and onions is a mainstay in most of my courses, but I think like just that like red onion on a burger, I'm like, you're not serving a purpose. Pickles and tomatoes are bringing something to the table. You're literally more of a garnish.
Yes, absolutely. Notice we left lettuce off the table because lettuce doesn't belong on a burger either, in my opinion. So,
like when I get a burger from if I'm going like a fancy place and they get like a big burger and they load it with toppings, I do take the lettuce off already. I'll leave the onion and everything else on there, but like what's the point of this lettuce? First of all, it brings you nutritional value. It's just getting in the way, and it's soaking up more of the juices that I want to eat.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And then lettuce trap burgers are just an abomination.
Oh, Jesus.
All right. So that was our burger. So let's move on to pizza here. All right, Nick. So here we go. We got this, and I went meats. Okay. So you got the classic. We got pepperoni. Mm-hmm. We've got sausage. Okay. And bacon, which is kind of a newer topping to pizza. And by contrast to the other 2. So pepperoni, sausage, and bacon. One's got to go. Which one is it?
So most people out there are gonna hate me for this, but I'm from the Northeast. Like we know pizza, and as much as I love bacon, that's the one that's got to go. Now, I love a chicken bacon ranch pizza. Don't get me wrong. But if we're talking about, hey, for the rest of your life, you can't have one of these, I can much easier not have bacon on pizza than sausage or pepperoni.
Where's the best pizza where you're at?
You throw a stone in any direction, you're going to hit a great pizzeria. Palermo's is really good. Godfather Pizza by the Office is really good. There's a ton of top-notch pizzerias. A lot of the Angeloni's got an 8.8 Barstool rating. They do like a thin crust. So there's so many good pizza places around here. It's ridiculous.
So you're a tried and true New York style pizza guy. Like
I like New York. Like that's mostly what I eat, but I actually prefer like more of a Naples style, like a margarita, more traditional, like Italian style, like what I would get when I went to Italy. Fresher ingredients, a little bit smaller, a little bit thinner. The tomatoes are a little bit fresher than just kind of like standard sauce. That's what I prefer. But in terms of like what I eat, a majority of is just basically traditional like New York style, Joe's Pizza. That's what we call it. Like traditional New York style. We call it like a Joe's Pizza because every Joe's Pizza, that's what they have.
So next time you come to the DFW area, I got to take you to Cane Rosso. It's like Nepalese style pizza from Napoli, and they're fantastic. They're absolutely fantastic.
Pizza has finally been able to be good elsewhere because they stopped trying to make New York style pizza, and they started making like higher end pizza, which you can actually make higher end pizza easier elsewhere than you can trying to copy New York style. So I thought
everything. It's everything. It's the dough. It's the water.
The water is so, especially from. Here's the water debate: is that we have as good a pizza in New Jersey and bagels, but the water in New York is better. There is nothing. I don't drink tap water. I always drink bottled water, except I will drink New York City tap water all the time. New York City has the best water, I think, in the country. I think it's like from an aquifer or like an aqueduct. It's like this whole thing from like up in the upstate is where it comes down. But you can go to a bathroom in a bar in New York City and fill your cup up with water, and it'll be the best tasting, cleanest water you've ever had. So the water in the city is excellent, and that plays into it. But also, we get the fresh ingredients. We're, the New Jersey tomatoes are right here. We're one of the biggest suppliers of tomatoes. So, when things with the fresh mozzarella, like the people who know how to make that are all based in this area, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York. It's going to be hard to like walk through Tennessee and find somebody making fresh mozzarella.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Places have gotten, other states they're coming up. They're getting it. They're starting to get it a little bit.
I'm with you so far. I'm 2 for 2 on this, man. I'm ditching the onion on a burger over the other two, as long as it's a good tomato.
Yeah.
And I'm ditching the bacon, not bacon period, just bacon on a pizza over traditional pepperoni and sausage.
There's so many other avenues for bacon. Where else am I going to eat pepperoni?
Yeah.
I mean, I can eat bacon in 10 other places.
Well, Subway tried to make pepperoni a thing by putting it onto every single sub that they made for a while, which was laughable.
Don't get me started. That place. I'm going to, and this is my service announcement for everybody, and because this is a big thing of mine. Don't ever get an Italian sandwich from any of these sandwich shops where it's like, oh, it's pepperoni and capicola and then ham. We don't eat ham like that. Like you go over to Italy, they're not having boar's head honey ham. So any bullshit places that have just like a ham sandwich and they're calling it their Italian hero, it's nonsense. It's against everything I stand for.
Fair enough. All right, so third topic is the hot dog. Okay, so I went a little different this time. This is kind of a collection of different types of things here. So we've got mustard, we've got cheese, and we've got chili. So which one's got to go off your hot dog? forevermore.
So it's gotta go. I'm gonna have to say the cheese.
Interesting.
Because I don't usually put either of them on. Usually for my hot dog, it's. So have you ever had like a New York City like style hot dog, like a dirty
Mustard
water
and
dog?
kraut, like off of the stand. No, I've never actually been to New York, but yeah, I mean, I know the style. Like, you know, you go to a cart and put kraut and sausage, peppers, and
so it's kraut, and then it's something. It's actually marketed. I don't know if you could buy it in stores out by you, but you can buy it in stores here. I think like Nathan's makes it. It comes in a jar, and it's just called onions in sauce. That's what it's called. And it's just like onions in a red sauce. I guess it's tomato based. I have no idea. Usually but you can just buy it at any supermarket here. So usually when I'm making hot dogs at home, or if I'm getting them from like a cart, I'm doing mustard and then onions and sauce. Like that's my hot dog. But if I'm gonna get other stuff, I do like a chili dog, and I like a chili dog more than a cheese dog. I actually like the flavor of mustard and chili, while it may seem weird.
Yes. No, it's not.
It's one of those weird things like that really works. That really
it's perfect.
Works. It's like the sweetness, or like if you get like a sweet, little zesty chili, but then also like the very mustardy taste of like a dark, like a spicy brown mustard.
Well, it cuts that richness of the chili. It's perfect. It's a perfectly balanced ingredient base. It's perfect.
And I only do spicy brown. I will not use, like, I don't think I've had plain yellow mustard in like 20 years.
I confess I do plain yellow mustard, but I'm much more towards the Dijon or the spicy brown. Or I'm that guy. I'm a big mustard fan though. But you know,
you do honey mustard on a hot dog?
No.
See, like, isn't that's a weird thing, right?
That's a weird thing. That's a little weird.
You don't know why, but it's like
honey mustard's for chicken tenders, and my son who will do that. Yes,
that's like the only place that like it belongs. Like chicken fingers and honey mustard.
Yeah. No, but no, I'm with you. We're 3 for 3, man. I'll ditch the cheese all day because I'd much rather have the chili, and the chili mustard combination is absolutely perfect. It's perfect.
Because anytime you're putting cheese on a hot dog, like, it doesn't belong there in the first place. So it's always it's either like a nacho cheese, or you're melting like American Kraft singles on it. It's like it wasn't meant to be on there. So it's like, so it's weird. But like chili is like, I don't know. It's chili. It's good.
It's so good. So good. Well, awesome. Well, that was our One Must Go segment. I appreciate that. And as always, it's brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Habano and distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey and Byron lines. So smoke one today and start living united. And then our next segment is easily become has become my favorite segment. I just love what my guests bring to the table each week with this, and this week, no doubt, is also going to be fantastic. We're going to be raising awareness and spotlighting a charity and nonprofit that's close to Nick and his family's heart, and this is something I'm really excited for you to talk about a little bit here, Nick. So I'll go ahead and introduce it. So the point of this segment is to always just kind of, spotlight nonprofits and charities of my guests choosing, just, to show what's really important to them and their families. And again, this certainly brings it. So Nick, you selected the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network. And they do incredible work for families, expectant families who are expecting a Down syndrome child after the birth, of course, support groups. I mean, the list of resources. I was looking at their website earlier. I was actually familiar with this charity, but I mean, some of their resources. I mean, they have dad support groups, mom support groups, different types of families. They even have a Spanish-speaking mom support group as well. They do retreats, and I mean, they really give back to these families who are in this situation of, raising a child with Down syndrome. Certainly not what most of these parents were expecting, obviously, when they were expecting a child, and they do great work. My cousin, God rest him, had Down syndrome, and he was just a beautiful soul. I know it's your niece is actually has Down syndrome as well. So, but why? Obviously, that's the reason why you picked this charity, Nick. But what has Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network done for you and your family, and why was it so important for you to talk about tonight?
So my sister, I asked her because the minute Vera was born, so they knew, from the facial features, they ended up running tests, and there's not a person I love more in this world than my niece. She's my goddaughter, Vera, and she is just a beautiful, vibrant, fun, intelligent, just wonderful addition to my life. And as soon as she was born, and my sister got out of the hospital. So my sister's a teacher. She's a very good. She was actually New Jersey's teacher of the state, or like #1 state teacher. She got an award a couple of years ago. So she's very aware of like kids with needs and like, what to do when when something like this that's unexpected happens. Whereas most of us just freak out and like, oh, what do we do now? She knew like, all right, she knows where to go and like get the right support and the right research and the right education so that they can, kind of properly do this, make sure everything is set, make sure that Vera has everything she needs, make sure that the family has all the kind of support that they need. And so she had worked with them, right away. I don't know exactly specifically what they did for her. My sister, they're relatively well, they do all right financially. And also my sister, being in education, was pretty familiar with what had to be done. So they handled it amazingly. And they they've given Vera like a beautiful home, and she's doing awesome. She's thriving. But not every family has that. Not every family has even the awareness of what does Down syndrome mean. Is there a life expectancy? There are certain physical issues that are going to come with that. Like they started teaching Vera sign language to make it easier for her to communicate. She had to wear a helmet for a few months because there was, some head shaping issues that they had to take care of. Not every family has the resources to take care of these things or to educate themselves to properly take care of these children. And so it's important that, a charity like the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network comes into play to educate these families, to work with them, providing them whatever they need. And education is the biggest one that I took away from it. I mean, they have other resources too. They have financial resources, and that kind of stuff. But it's the education on what does this really mean? What is it's going to mean for the child's future? What's it going to mean for the family's future? And kind of laying that all out, setting expectations and how to beat these expectations, I think is really important. I have a vastly different outlook on Down syndrome now than I did 4 years ago. Like vastly, not that I had a negative connotation. It was more of an, I don't know. Is she not going to go to school? Like, does she need to be in a special class? Like, I had no idea. That kid's going to be a rock star. She's going to be an absolute rock star. She's going to college. Like, she's going to have a very fulfilling life. And it's because of charities like this that educate people and work with people that these kids have a chance and these families have a chance. So it's a very important, it's very important work that they're doing.
Mm-hmm. So Vera's 4 now, right? Vera
will be 4 in August.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. Yeah. So, and she's already learning sign language and stuff like that.
Yeah, she her verbal skills are getting there. She's getting a lot better. Obviously, she's a little behind, where, her brother Miles was when he was 3.5. But she's very smart. She's very intuitive, and she's brave. Like, she does not give a crap, about it. She'll run upstairs. She'll run downstairs. She'll jump off of things. She has no fear at all. But yeah, she says, more, or, thank you. When she wants to have more French fries and my sister says no, my sister tells her no more in sign language. I don't know how to do it, but my sister tells her in sign language, like, no more. So they're learning to communicate with that, because I think there is a chance of hearing issues. So that and also it's the verbal communication is just going to take a little bit longer, but for some reason she's picked up on doing some of the sign language a lot easier. So it's just been easier to communicate this way, at least at this stage,
Sure.
at least from what I've seen.
So you mentioned that you had this, I'm going to use the word ignorance, but I mean, like you said, you didn't really have any experience with it before, before she was born, and through your sister and through organizations like this, you've been able to learn a lot. Like I found that with my cousin Joey specifically, it taught me a lot more. He taught me a lot more about myself than he ever taught me about him.
Mm-hmm.
Would you feel that you get the same from Vera, or
Absolutely.
do you have a different experience?
No, absolutely. Anybody like that, anybody with, I don't even want to call it a disability, but anybody with a uniqueness about them it teaches you more about you, because you realize, I don't know if you want to say prejudices, but just biases you might have had on something that you had no idea about, opinions you might have had on something that you had a glancing look at before. And now when you take a deep dive into it, you realize how wrong you were. And again, I didn't have any negative biases. I just didn't know. And it was just like, I don't know, like it's whatever. It was more so that, like, when I was told, obviously when she was born, it was more of like, I was scared. Like, what does this mean? She can't have a normal life. She's going to have a more normal life than I do. Like it's all about learning. They just learn differently. And if you learn to teach them within the confines of how they learn, they will thrive in that. But it's not about like, just put them in a standard class, or the opposite is like, no, seclude them and only teach them like the most basic things. Like, they're capable of so much more than I think society really thinks that they are. Both intellectually and physically and emotionally, to understand complex emotions. You just got to work with them at a slightly different pace and in a slightly different way. But I love her to death. And I was not I love my nephew too, but I was not like a doting uncle. Like, I was just more like, all right, when he's older, I'll take him to the batting cage and, we'll watch, like, now we watch movies together and stuff. With Vera, though, I was, and still am, a total mush, like just a total sap.
That's wonderful. I think it's very clear. I mean, just hearing you talk about her on occasion, I even mentioned, like, when we were talking about which charity we were going to choose, and I still felt kind of weird, because I was like, well, I've heard you mention her, maybe this is something you want to bring in. You're already like, yeah, that's exactly what my family and I are talking about. Yeah. Is which way we want to go with this. And I think it's apparent to anyone who's listened to you even mention, even in the brief moments that you have, how she's enriched your life. Like, I think it's that apparent. And they have a way of doing that. And,
because everybody's, she could not walk into a room and not be the center of attention. And I don't mean that in like she's doing some kind of performance and so everyone's looking at her, but I'm like, everyone
it's a
everyone
light.
Just taken by her. She is so pleasant. Her smile is great. Like, when she can be crying and like, I'll walk into a room and she'll see me and she'll just, run over, and it's just it makes you feel a way that like not many other things do. This tattoo is for her. She's the wildflower. So that's what I got.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So my sister there's another company, and the name is escaping me right now, but they do specialized jewelry for families with kids I don't think it's just Down syndrome, with disabilities. And she'll do a special jewelry piece, and then she'll sell it, and she'll name it after your child. So when they were picking out the one to do for Vera, my sister picked the wildflower because she's just such a free spirit and everything. And when I saw the design, I'm like, I want that on my arm. So I got it immediately.
That's awesome. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, so check out the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network, and if you feel called to donate, please do. And with always with all of my guests, Nick, my wife and I, when we started this project a little over a year and a half ago, we launched it every week. We were spotlighting these charities of different choices and stuff. My wife and I have pledged to donate a small amount to each one. So later tonight, we'll be donating a small amount to the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network in your family's honor and Vera's honor. So,
wow, I gotta tell my sister tomorrow. That means a lot, Bear. Thank you so much.
well, no, thank you. Like, you know, they children in general. I have two boys, and I'm very, very blessed to have them in my life, and their children are a light, but there's something very, very, very special about the light that children with Down syndrome bring. It's there. Unless you spend time with them, you don't understand it, and that's why I think organizations like these are fantastic, because they can spread that light. You know, as sappy as that sounds, you know, they can spread that light and really get people to understand what beautiful souls these people are, and the contribution they can make is just as great, if not greater, than what you and I will do in our lifetime. Probably greater.
like it's like I said, I'm such a sap now. Like if the me of 6 years ago saw the me now, he would kick my ass for being like a wimp. But he would be very wrong. Like how she has changed. I mean, listen, my dad is just, you know, older. He's an attorney, you know, old guy from New York, and he's kind of just what do you want? That kind of guy. You should see him when she comes into a room. You know, he couldn't be a happier man. She has that ability with people. And I'm very excited to watch her grow up. It's going to be a treat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, check out the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network. I put the link in the chat. The link will also be on the show notes, as well as a opportunity to donate if you feel called. Small or big amount, every little bit counts to organizations like these. And the education that Nick mentioned is just off the charts with this organization. Do your research, check it out. I mean, the programs they've got, the retreats they've got, they're doing so much for families and for the children, and it's just it's an incredible organization. So check it out. That leads us into so we've got two more questions for you tonight, Nick, and I really do appreciate you staying up way past your bedtime, as you mentioned. Right. We started past your bedtime, so maybe the marathon training will start another day later. But definitely want to go into our solitude moment. So this was a segment that I kind of came up with because cigars are very communal. We talked a lot about this in the first, as when we were getting to know you, and how, you know, the redesign of the studio was meant to bring this community part of it, and they are very community based. But there are always those one moments. Those they're very few and fleeting, because most of us smoke as a social thing. But there's that moment of solitude with a cigar that can be a memory that lasts a lifetime. Do you have one of those memories, Nick? It was just you and just the cigar. Where were you? What was the cigar? What was the moment about? Do you have one of those moments?
Sure, I do. Okay, so I was with some friends, and a buddy of mine a few weeks before said, "Hey, he wouldn't tell me where. Like, I'm at the Special Cigar Store." I think he was at Holtz. And he's like, "Is there some kind of, like, I know you said you like Arturo Fuente. Is there some kind of like Opus X or some rare Fuente that you have always wanted to try?" And I'm like, "Yeah, the 13. I'm like, "That's just, I've always seen it on Instagram, and I've never found one before, the Forbidden 13. He's like, "Okay, thanks." And then a few weeks later, when I saw him, he's like, "Hey, I've been keeping this in my humidor, and I got you one." He's like, "Don't worry about paying me." He's like, "It's whatever." But, you know, I had given him so many cigars that he wanted to give me this as a treat. And he's like, "And don't need to smoke it now." And then one day after work, I just went over to the lounge, and this is back when I was drinking bourbon, and I got like a big old glass. Like, I think I got a Manhattan. And I'm like, I'm just going to sit here and drink a couple Manhattans and smoke this thing. And it was just like the stars aligned. It was just this perfect combination of, like, the cigar was great. It wasn't the best cigar I ever had, but that's not what it was about. It wasn't about it was about, like, I checked off a big bucket list thing, and it was just it was a spring day, and it was like 5:30. So it was like still warm. It was just a perfect scenario with the perfect drink. And I smoked that thing down to the nub, and I enjoyed I don't think I looked at my phone. I think I just sat there by myself in the lounge and smoked the cigar down to ash. It was a solid moment. It's a core memory.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. It never ceases to amaze me. Like I said, this is a very communal thing and stuff, but there's like everyone has that one or two or three moments where it's just like time suspends itself, which is fitting for a Fuente, right? You know, can't rush the hands of time, right?
Well, I find that some of my best cigar memories are with other people, but you don't really focus on the cigar then. You're like, oh, I remember having so much fun with my friends and we were drinking, we were hanging out, smoking cigars. But I'm not usually paying attention to the cigar. I was paying attention to the cigar when I had the Forbidden 13. It was me and that cigar were on a date and I was taking her home.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. So I know with COVID, that prevented you to do a lot of travel and a lot of things in the past couple of years and stuff like that. I know you weren't at this past year's PCA. Will you be making a return to PCA this year?
So that is yet to be determined. Can't get too much into it, but I think everyone is pretty much aware of the issues that a lot of companies have at the PCA. I'm not going to speak on it. I don't know if we're going yet, but that doesn't mean we're not traveling. I will be at the Texas Cigar Festival in a few weeks in Houston. I will be in Nashville at some point for the Mother Church, when we want to do an event with that. And we're going to try to do some factory tours this year too, to get some good content. So like, we're going to be making some moves. Yeah.
Beautiful. Fantastic. Well, I really enjoyed your PCA interviews in the past. So I'm selfishly hoping you can make it out. Love to see you, of course, and meet you in person. And then also to see some of that great content that you've always produced and everything. So which is there any factories in line to be the first couple, or?
So the first one we want to do is Altadis has just redone their factory. So they just built like this big addition. Like this is going to be the new factory. And they have like these murals painted on the walls and all this stuff. So like that's the main one because, it's basically our factory. So we can spend as much time there and film what we want. The next one I really want to get to is I've never been to Chateau Fuente. And
beautiful.
I have to, I have to before I want to stick to the DR. I love going to Nicaragua. Nicaragua's great, but it's a lot of travel. It's a long plane ride and then like a 3-hour car ride. And then
on a good day.
And then the hotel situation is always weird. If you don't get into, I don't even remember what the Hex. If you don't get into the Hex, you got to stay in some pretty shanty hotel. It's a lot going on. Whereas the DR, like everything's a resort. Even the cheapest place is like a 5-star resort. And also I haven't spent that much time in the DR. I've been to the old Altadis factory once before I even worked in corporate. I have never been to the Davidoff factory, General's factory, Lito Gomez. Like I've never been to, so I want to explore the Dominican and get some really good content there. I've been to most of the major Nicaraguan ones. So like I actually want to explore the DR where some of these, these are foundational brands for, and like, my personal cigar history, LFD, Fuente, General, like these are the brands that built my palate, when I was 22, 23 years old. So it's important to me to get out there and see that history and those processes.
Yeah, we could talk a little bit more offline about this, but that'll be, you will have a hell of a time and it'll be fantastic once you get there, and I promise you it'll be better than what you're expecting in your mind. Guaranteed. Oh, yeah. Guaranteed. Well, that brings us to our last question of the night. And as always, it is our curveball segment. Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust curveball segment. In fact, fastballs or curveballs, it doesn't matter. Since the company's inception, Steve Saka has been knocking them out of the park. Count it, 7 consecutive years in the consensus top 3. Congratulations to our good friend, Mr. Steve Saka. So, Nick, I did know one thing in particular about you. You're a wrestling fan, WWE, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
So yeah, my brother is the big wrestling fan. I'm more of a UFC fan, but he has gotten me into wrestling. in the past couple of years.
Now, is he the contact that has all the figurines, or is that another friend of yours?
That's my brother's friend, Bud.
Okay.
Yeah,
I remember hearing about that, and I'm a big collector of things outside of cigars too, not figurines, but that caught my ear. So this was my curveball segment for you. So let's focus on. I know you're a big UFC guy, but focusing on the world of wrestling. So there's three people, and you can pick anyone from history, alive, dead, doesn't matter, in the world of wrestling. Who would you partner with? Who would want to beat in the ring, and who would you be willing to lose to? Those are the three ones. So who would you want to partner with? Who would you absolutely just want to demolish in the ring? And who would you concede a really great defeat to?
So I would want to partner with, you gotta give me a minute. Cause like my brother and his friends are going to see this and they're going to judge me on my answer. So I would want to partner with, I always really liked Triple H, man. I really liked Triple H. He was badass. He was jacked. He did the spit with the water. I would want to partner with Triple H. Who would I want to beat? I kind of want to beat Brock Lesnar. I know he's amazing, and he was a UFC fighter too, but he broke Undertaker's unbeaten streak at WrestleMania, and that always kind of bothered me. So I would want to beat Brock Lesnar, and I would probably want to partner either with Stone Cold. You got to partner with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Okay,
like, he's a legend.
You'd lose to Triple H, partner with Steve Austin, and you would want to beat Brock Lesnar. See, I'd want to beat the shit out of John Cena, man. That's just me.
Yeah. But he's become a really good actor. I actually have more respect for him now as an actor than I did when he was like.
He seems like a good, he seems like an okay dude. I don't know, just him in the ring, his persona that he had, it just bothered me.
It was like the Fresh Prince kind of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna rap for the kids about the military or something, like whatever his thing was.
Well, and the whole handshake thing, I just didn't. I was like, that's really stupid.
I will say the memes of him that you can't see him are still going strong, and I find that hilarious. The John Cena memes are still great.
I'm surprised you didn't pick The Rock. He's such an icon.
He's too much. I love The Rock, but I'm also enough. You're not
enough with what The Rock's cooking. You're done.
You're not that great at everything. You're just really jacked. Everything about you. If you lost 50 pounds tomorrow, you're not this guy anymore. You're not super famous. Calm down on pretending you're a god and we should vote you in as president. You're just a really jacked guy who is in movies. But he was a good wrestler. But he never he never really did it for me. Stone Cold was always my guy. He was such a pop culture phenomenon when I was younger. And then seeing him come out at WrestleMania this year was so cool. And he has a crazy story. He broke his neck and came back and the whole thing. Triple H was always just really cool. And I not that I take inspiration from him, but his transition from, frontline star to kind of back end management, kind of not that I'm managing, but going from just the YouTube guy to actually, doing projects and everything. I like that. And then, Brock, listen, ultimate, behemoth of a man, UFC champion, NCAA champion, WrestleMania, champion, WWE Raw and SmackDown champion at one point. But when he came back to WrestleMania after being in the UFC, and then he was the guy to beat Undertaker. You couldn't give it to somebody who had just been in the WWE for a while. You couldn't give it to a Triple H or a Shawn Michaels, somebody who was just there. You just give it to, I feel like they just kind of gave it to Brock Lesnar, but I don't know. This is my opinion.
There you go. Well, Nick, I can't thank you enough for all the time that you gave me tonight. What an amazing conversation this has been. I've really enjoyed this, getting to know you and exploring your story and your journey in this industry. And again, hats off to the work that you're doing at JR's. Just incredible stuff, great content, and and always fun in finding the great conversation, just like hopefully we do here every week.
Thanks, man. Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. Thank you so much.
So for everyone out there, really appreciate all of your time and staying up late with us as well. And as always, you can find all of our content on our Facebook page, ELOSOFUMAR. You can also check out our YouTube channel, ELOSOFUMAR. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you're listening to us later, wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, or iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure to hit your download, subscribe, and review button. If you already are a subscriber, do me a favor, hit the unsubscribe button, but please don't forget to hit resubscribe, because that helps my numbers and helps me get great guests like Nick here to come back whenever I need him to. So I really do appreciate that. This was our 205th take. 205 of these. I can't believe it. 205th take live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star studio of Azle, Texas. As always, I'm your host, Barry Duplessis. He's Nick Libretti. And guess what, everybody? We'll see you next time.